93.8.
Right, as promised, we are looking now at sport in Saudi, as it's emerging that the kingdom plans to launch a multi-billion-dollar investment company, basically with the aim of developing professional sports in the kingdom. There's various different business models being mooted by various different news organisations, but you can see evidence of it already on the ground. You know, we've had endless headlines just this week alone about football managers and footballers making the move to the Saudi Pro League as those teams flex their financial muscles. Now, the Brazilian Roberto Firmino is one of the most recent. He joined Al Ahly on a 3-year deal after leaving Liverpool.
Elliott, Salah, can he tee one up? Firmino! The script was written, the stage was set, and Roberto Firmino has ridden to Liverpool's rescue, perhaps one last time.
And that is probably why they decided to hire him as a decent striker. Now, let's find out why the football league there in Saudi, the Saudi Pro League, is one of the fastest growing in the world. Joined, I'm delighted to say, by Steve Bainbridge. He's head of sports and entertainment for the Middle East for Greenberg Traurig LLP. He's actually joining us live from Saudi. Morning, Steve. How you doing?
Good morning, Georgia.
So tell me, how big a deal are these latest signings? And do you think they are indeed part of a wider picture?
Well, look, as you say, I think our timing is right in terms of me being here in Saudi this week. Largely, the football world has been caught flat-footed. The transfer window hasn't been open very long, and already we see that some of these signings are just cascading. And I do think it's clearly part of a broader strategy. We're talking about, sort of 2030 goals have been mooted about being one of the top 10 revenue leagues. And Saudi has the muscle and also the strategy to make it come true. So as a sports fan, I'm excited about it. And there are only certain places and times when projects like this can be undertaken. So let's sit back and enjoy what happens.
So there's a couple of big rumours swirling around at the moment. And it basically sounds like they're both linked. There's one in the Financial Times, there's one in Bloomberg. And they basically both centre around the model that Saudi is potentially planning to follow in order to promote football in the country. Now, one suggestion is that the PIF, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, is investing money in the clubs with a view that the clubs will then be developed and then sold on as assets. Now, what do you think of that suggestion?
Yeah, I think, look, we need to be a bit cautious because we obviously have to get more detail that's publicly available first. But I think there are a couple of points to keep in mind. I mean, already suggestions have been made comparing what may be trying to happen to here to what happened in China some years ago. I think Saudi is a more cautious market. I think we're probably in a transitional stage. I very much like the fact that the 4 clubs we're talking about now have the stability of PIF behind them, but it probably is transitional that you wouldn't anticipate 10 years from now the PIF would still hold those. It would be my assumption that just as the maturity of an asset, that would provide stability right now, but that ultimately the goal would likely be foreign direct investment, and you would have foreign investment not only in those 4 clubs, but potentially in many others in the Saudi Pro League, the top division, and even lower divisions.
Can you remind me what happened in China? Did they follow a similar model?
No, I think in China it was I don't have a great deal of information on that. I mean, we dealt with a few transactions at the time on the sort of player and agent side from legal advisory issues. But I think what we saw there was it was less coordinated in terms of individual companies, individual people and corporations that were backing the teams, some of whom were highly leveraged to begin with, but because they didn't have the sort of close level of government management that we're seeing from PIF. And in the Saudi situation, I think they were more subject to the vagaries of the economy. And when there was a downturn, it didn't work well. We saw some bankruptcies, but I think there are other fundamental reasons to suggest it's different too. I mean, Saudi has had a much longer and more successful history in competitions like the Asian Champions League. They've had greater fan engagement. Football as a passion is not a new thing in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, we saw the heights of euphoria, when the national team defeated Argentina in the World Cup. But Saudi roots run deep in football, as do the clubs and their support.
Now, the other big story is a suggestion that the PIF are setting up this special multi-billion-dollar investment company to develop professional sports more widely. We've seen evidence of the impact of Saudi interest in sports like golf, for example. How powerful could this investment company be in the worlds of other sports?
Very powerful, is my initial take on that. And as you rightly point to what we've seen in golf, what we're seeing presently in terms of football. And when you think again, we've spoken about this a number of times over the years, in terms of asset classes, sports provide some great assets. It's often there's a financial limitation on developing things well. Those limitations don't apply in the Saudi context. So whatever form it takes for this fund, we've seen, and I've seen with strategic engagement with clients at the government level, there's very well thought out, seriously planned and supported activity in developing these plans. So I would say, look, no sport is potentially off the radar. And a lot of sports out there have been held back simply because they don't have proper funding and organization. There is a chance right now for that to be done right.
Yeah, so we were just talking to Wolfie, who is known here as the godfather of cycling. Obviously, Wolfie's Bike Shop. He is also involved in the professional cycling arena. He suggested that maybe that might be something that the Saudis are looking at as well. So maybe cycling might be on their radar. I've read elsewhere that maybe tennis might be on their radar. What would you suggest is probably first on their list?
Yeah, look, I think those are both great candidates. I remember, having been practicing in the GCC now for 16, 17 years. I remember before we even had what was then the Dubai Tour, now is a well-known and well-loved UCI tour event, the UAE Tour. Cycling is beloved. Tennis hits a sweet spot as well. And I think, too, one thing we should keep in mind about these sports is that they're also very good for participation, and they hit some other targets as well in terms of being able to get people involved, especially at the student level and in schools and that sort of thing. So I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. Much sport has not been developed because it didn't have either the money or the organizational nous to help it grow and deliver on a broader set.
Steve Bainbridge there, Head of Sports and Entertainment at Greenberg Touareg LLP. Thank you.